Hello YouTube. Doing a video again on the Northeast style, what they call the ambush style fighting that was popular with the Native Americans during not only the French and Indian War, but the Revolutionary War, as far back as to when Native Americans first acquired firearms during the Beaver Wars, the Iroquois Wars, Queen Anne's War, King Hendricks, all those wars that came up until the series of French and Indian Wars. And what I decided to do is I was doing some research and going through the type of warfare that was fought here where I am. I live in the Adirondack Mountains. I actually am in between what was Fort Carillon, which is now Ticonderoga, Lake George, which is where Fort William Henry was. So this was the stomping grounds for not only Robert Rogers, his Rangers, but for a lot of skirmishing, things that went on in this area. There wasn't really any battles that happened in this particular spot, but they weren't far from here. Savastay Point is not far from here. Carillon, Port Ticonderoga is not far from here. There was a lot of battles and a lot of fighting, but not the huge, massive land battles that you normally are used to. Not like your Yorktowns, your Camden, your huge big battles, your Brooklyn Heights, your Bunker Hills. That's what a lot of people think of when they think of battles in those days. A lot of the battles up here were smaller, and the warfare style was entirely different. It was the ambush style fighting like the Native Americans were used to. Close range. A lot of times it was not necessarily cartridges. With the Rangers, and the first book there is the Robert Rogers Rules for the Ranging Service by Matt Wolf. That is an excellent book because that covers Robert Rogers, but it covers it in detail. Goes through his rules that he wrote out, which is what the Special Forces still use now. But he really went through it more, and he did a lot of historical digging into each rule, what was behind it, what was going, how they did and performed each thing with historical context. The other book is The Small Arms of the British Forces in America, and a lot of people don't understand the way cartridges were listed up here, and everybody thinks it's just either paper cartridges and ball or buck and ball. There was also buckshot, a separate buckshot cartridge. And in the Small Arms of the British Forces in America, they list the cartridges like this. The buck and ball cartridge contained 1 ball and 4 buckshot, and the buckshot cartridge contained 15 buckshot of 32-inch diameter. So basically .320, size, basically almost the same size as double-aught buckshot, very close. And of course the 1 round ball. Now, when you get into the Robert's Rules and Robert Rogers, what he did was they didn't want all the paper cartridges, not necessarily, because they found that if they got damp, they became problematic. And not only that, you had a lot of volunteers and provincials who they couldn't use the cartridges that the British made because they were using guns, maybe not quite like this, because this is a little bit later style Indian trade musket, but a lot of the fusees and the fusils were 62 caliber, or smaller than the standard British Bess 75 caliber. So a lot of them would load from their powder horn, and they'd load themselves. Roberts had his rules where he had them with 60, enough for 60 cartridges, enough for 60 rounds of ammunition. And Captain John Knox, describing on the Siege of Quebec, described buckshot in his term of smaller than the size of a full-grown pea. So he doesn't even describe it as caliber. And doing some research, I found that they excavated not far from here where buckshot was found that was .27 diameter, not the .32, which a lot of these guys would have made their own ammunition on the spot. They cast their own balls. They probably even cast their own buckshot. They also cast swan shot. anything that they could use. Now, as far as the tactics go, prior to what's known as the Second Battle on Snowshoes, Rogers described where he knew he was going to be facing the enemy. He listed this: "We immediately laid down our packs and prepared for battle, supposing there to be a whole number of our main body of the enemy who we were marching on our left up the rivulet upon the ice. I ordered Ensign MacDonald to the command of the advance guard, which we faced to the left, and made a flanking party to our right. We marched to within a few yards of the bank, which was higher than the ground we occupied, and observing the ground gradually to descend from the bank of the river to the foot of the mountain, we extended our party along the bank far enough to command the whole of the enemies at once. We waited till their front was nearly opposite to our left wing, when I fired a gun as a signal for a general discharge upon them, whereupon we gave them the first fire, which killed about 40 Indians." These were troops that were... This was actually just the advance guard of a much larger force. Rogers almost didn't get out of that one. He lost a lot of men in that Second Battle on Snowshoes, but it shows that that's the type of warfare they faced. They basically ambushed the enemy, which was how they would do it. It wasn't stand-up line battle. These guys laid down their packs, and they basically got in a position where they could ambush the enemy. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going to do this video here. I'm going to take this gun, and I'm going to load it with buck and ball. And I decided as a compromise, it's going to be being a 62 caliber. It's be 1.60 diameter round ball, 70 grains 2F, and 3.310 lead round balls. And I'm not going to use the cartridge. I'm just going to load it naked ball, powder, naked ball, buckshot on top, just a simple paper wad over the top of that, and I'm going to do a quick aim fire at 35 yards, 35 yards. But I'm not doing it at the range. I'm doing it in the woods. I'm just going to do it as quick as I can because back behind where I have property, some of it's a little open. I mean, I really could get into thick brush, but I'm just going to do it that way. It's cold right now, which is what it would have been during the times of these battles. It's about 30 degrees right now. It's not warm today. So I'm going to do it as close to conditions, maybe not exact conditions, but close to what they would have had. I'm just going to take a simple cardboard silhouette, no bullseyes, no nothing. I'm going to stand it up and have it at 30, like I said, roughly between 30, let's just say between 30 and 40 yards. I'm going to try to measure out about 35. Kind of what would be, an ambush style shot. Quick shot, and just see what comes of that. See what kind of shot I can get. If it hang fires, misfires, whatever, we'll see, just see what comes of it. And I'm going to take a couple of shots, and when I get those done, I'll let you know how it went. Well, okay, YouTube, there you have it. There are my two shots. I paced it off again to about 35 yards, so that's what I'm going to call it. And it's not quite a full-size man. It'd be a small man, as you can see by the door. It's not quite what would be a full-size adult, but it's still, it's a pretty tight group. The first shot, I did have a hang fire, but it still hit fairly dead center. The round ball was, almost right to the middle. And the 3 buckshot pellets, 310 diameter balls, did pretty well. The second shot was a little better. That was not a hang fire. I only got 2 of the buckshot in there, but again, the round ball itself is dead center, which would have been on a person devastating. Any one of those would have definitely probably taken somebody out of the fight. The 310 is really not a real powerful round ball, but a couple of them to the vitals, yeah, you're going to have a bad day. That 600 round ball, you're having a very bad day. So this is again that style of warfare, that up close, personal, ambush style warfare that you don't see a lot of represented. You do in the movies, but not correctly. You don't really see it done with smoothbore. You see it always done with rifles. Good example, you see it like Last of the Mohegans, you see a little bit of that. But you don't see it like up close. If you even, which is incorrect in the movie Last of the Mohegans, that big battle at the end, the massacre. Even the Native Americans firing from distance, from inside, from the woods like that. Yes, they would have fired that way, but probably between the line of column and the troops and the woods is probably a good 80-90 yards. Yeah, you can do a lot of damage, but it's still not that up close and personal. They didn't really shoot like that. Shot and powder was valuable to them, so they made it count. Every book that I've read is that they like to fight with, and when they would try to fire, it would usually be very close distance, probably well under 50 yards, if not closer. It would be tight. It would be very close, and just let them have it at short range. It's one of the reasons why Native Americans liked the lighter guns, the shorter barreled guns, because they liked that up close type of fighting. And Rogers and his Rangers and later other different Ranger troops followed that same type of tactics. Francis Marion followed it in the Revolutionary War. That same up close, personal, ambush style fighting. It was very, very prevalent with Native Americans. It's why the British were absolutely terrified to and anger the Mohawk, because the Mohawk were the best fighters and most well equipped with firearms than anyone in all of North America. Even the British had to admit we couldn't take them in a fight. There's no way, because they got once they were introduced to firearms. Of course, the British had their style, their line of firing, the linear fire, and that's why even Rogers, among some of his peers, was not respected. It's why Francis Marion was despised by Horatio Gates. They didn't like that style of fighting. That was not gentlemanlike. To them, fighting the same way the Native Americans, that savage type of behavior, that savage type of fighting, even though it proved to be extremely effective, they just didn't like it. It was done by both sides. The French had not only the Native Americans, but they had some of their troops that would go out and fight that same way. And it shows you how effective it can be. And the next time I do this, I'm probably going to use either my dog-lock carbine or my Brown Bess 1748 artillery carbine. I'm hoping to do it depends if we get any snow up here. If we don't get any snow up here and I can get out back here on a decent day, yeah, it's cold, but at least I'm not traipsing through a lot of snow. I would like to do the next target. I'm going to try the 15 buckshot pellets. I'm going to try that, and I'm going to see what that'll do. Same style, same setup, same everything, and see what that does. And see again, quick shots like this, just to show how these guns were, how effective they were. Because everybody's mindset for so long was that these smoothbore guns at 35, 40, 50 yards, granted this is only 35 yards, were not really effective. I'm going to here to tell you right now, at 50 yards, those two round balls would have still been in that target. Maybe the bottom would have been a little lower, it's hard to say, but that top one would have probably still been somewhere in the vitals at 50 yards. Maybe even farther than that. And again, these are quick, first pull up well aimed, you know, these are just a quick aim, boom, very fast. You know, then these are smooth bores. There are no sights on this. Just a simple, basically, you know, like with the trade gun. Has a little simple post, nothing much more than a shotgun bead. You know, the best is the bayonet lug. Same with the dog lock. You know, just a very simple pull up and shoot. And with that being said, YouTube, have a good day. I'm going to try some more videos like this. And maybe I'll try them more during the winter, give more realistic conditions. And maybe I will do one out in the snow. I haven't decided yet. You know, going to see how the weather is, because we don't seem to get a little snow where you can negotiate with it. You just get a lot. But I'll have to see what works and see what comes out of it. With that being said, YouTube, have a good day.